You can almost feel the tension in the air at Muirfield Village. The memorial tournament is Jack Nicklaus's home. This is his house, the event he built, the course he designed. But this year, something felt different. It didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a storm was about to break. The 86-year-old legend had 47 of the best players in the world sitting right in front of him. The room was packed, the atmosphere was heavy, and Jack wasn't there to give a friendly welcome. He was there to send a clear and brutal message. A message directed at one man. Brian Rolapp, the new CEO, sitting just a few feet away. Rolapp came from the NFL. He has big plans. Massive changes are coming to the PGA Tour. But Jack Nicklaus? He didn't like what he was hearing. Not one bit. And he decided right there, in front of everyone, that he wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. Right now, golf fans everywhere are asking the same question. What exactly did Rolapp do to push the Golden Bear over the edge? And why did Jack choose to do this in front of the entire field, where nobody could look away? This was not a private conversation behind closed doors. This was an open confrontation, an interrogation. And when Jack looked at Rolapp and spoke his mind, you could have heard a pin drop. Here's my take. This clash isn't just about one argument. It tells us everything about the battle between golf's rich history and the push for modern change. But I want to know what you think. Was Jack right to call him out like that? Or is Rolapp just trying to do what's best for the future? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you want the full breakdown of exactly what was said, why Jack lost his temper, and what happens next for the tour, hit that subscribe button right now. Because trust me, you do not want to miss what comes next. Now, before we get into the full story, you need to understand why Jack Nicklaus speaking out like this is such a massive deal. This isn't some random golf analyst giving an opinion. This is the Golden Bear, the man with 18 major championships. The man who built Muirfield Village with his own hands and turned it into one of the most respected tournaments on the entire PGA Tour calendar. And here's what makes this truly fascinating. When Jack sat down for that press conference on Tuesday, he actually tried to stay quiet at first. He said, and I'm quoting him directly, "Well, I don't want to comment on the tour's schedule because I'm not exactly in favor of what they're doing right now. But I really haven't had a conversation. I want to sit down with Brian and Jay and have that conversation." He tried to hold back. He really did. He knew he was stepping into dangerous territory. But then something happened. The 86-year-old legend couldn't stop himself. The words just started pouring out. And this is where it gets explosive. Jack looked at the 47 players sitting in that room and he laid it all out. He talked about how the tour is cramming too many big tournaments into too small a window. He pointed to the Cognizant Classic in Florida as an example, sandwiched between Pebble Beach, Tiger's event at Riviera, Bay Hill, and the Players' Championship. And then he asked a question that cut straight to the heart of the matter. I mean, what chance does that tournament have? What chance does that tournament have? Those words hit hard. Because Jack wasn't just talking about one event. He was talking about the soul of the PGA Tour, the smaller tournaments that built this sport, the events that gave players like him their start, the tournaments that real golf fans love because they demand precision, control, and shot-making, not just overpowering a course. And then Jack delivered the line that made everyone in that room sit up straight. He said, "I probably shouldn't have brought it up here. I'll get chastised for that later." He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he was crossing a line, but he didn't care anymore. Because the man who has seen everything in golf, who has watched this tour evolve for more than 5 decades, genuinely believes that what's coming next could damage the game he loves. Now here's where it gets even more intense. Brian Rolapp wasn't just sitting in that room hearing this. He was the target. And according to multiple reports, the conversation that's coming between these two men is going to be one of the most difficult meetings the PGA Tour has ever seen. Dan Rappaport, who covers golf closely, put it perfectly when he said, "It's got to be hard for Brian Rolapp, a guy who comes from outside of golf, to hear Jack Nicklaus say this stuff." And then he added this chilling prediction. He's going to have to explain that the PGA Tour, as you knew it, is not what the PGA Tour of tomorrow is going to look like. Think about that for a moment. The PGA Tour, as you knew it, is not what the PGA Tour of tomorrow is going to look like. That's what this entire conflict is really about. Rolapp came from the NFL. He has a different vision. He wants to compress the season into 6 months, create a two-tier system with promotion and relegation, and treat golf more like a product to be optimized rather than a tradition to be preserved. And Jack Nicklaus? He's the guardian of that tradition. So here's the question that should be burning in your mind right now. What exactly did Jack say to Rolapp's face when they finally sat down together? And what did the 47 players in that room actually witness? Because trust me, what happened behind those closed doors at Muirfield Village is the real story. And I'm about to tell you exactly what went down. But first, let's understand who Brian Rolapp really is and why his plans are causing so much concern among players and legends alike. Rolapp spent 22 years at the NFL. 22 years. He knows how to run a sports league. He knows how to generate revenue. He knows how to create a product that sells. And when he was announced as the new PGA Tour CEO in June of 2025, he made a statement that raised a lot of eyebrows. He said he wouldn't be overly bound by golf's traditions. Think about that. The man who is supposed to lead the PGA Tour openly admitting that he doesn't feel tied to the history of the sport. That's like someone becoming the head of Wimbledon and saying they're not overly bound by grass courts. It's like becoming the commissioner of the NFL and saying you're not overly bound by the Super Bowl. For someone like Jack Nicklaus, those words were a slap in the face. So what exactly is Rolapp planning? Well, his blueprint is ambitious. He wants to create a two-tier system. Think of it like the English Premier League in soccer, a championship series for the elite players and a challenger series for the rest. The top performers from the Challenger Series would get promoted to the Championship Series, while the bottom performers from the Championship Series would get relegated down. He wants to compress the schedule. Instead of the PGA Tour running from January to November, he wants to pack everything into 6 months. From February to August, all the big events, all the signature events, all the majors, all jammed into a tight window. He wants to expand the fields for signature events. Currently, the elite tournaments have about 70 to 80 players. Under Rolapp's plan, that number jumps to 120. More players, more competition, but also less exclusivity, less of that special feeling that comes with playing in a limited field event. And here's the part that has players worried. No more sponsor exemptions in the top-tier events. If you're not in the championship series, you don't get invited. Period. No more local favorites getting a spot at the Memorial. No more special invites for players who have historic ties to a tournament. So when Rolapp presented this vision to the players, some of them were excited. Some of them saw it as a way to grow the game, a way to create more drama, more stakes, more money. But others, they saw a threat to everything they love about the sport. Justin Thomas, one of the game's biggest stars, spoke up at the RBC Heritage earlier this year. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that the current schedule is not what he would have chosen. He talked about the difficulty of playing 3 or 4 weeks in a row, the mental exhaustion, the physical toll. He's not alone in this thinking. A lot of players feel exactly the same way. Now think about what's been happening on the tour this year. The Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial Country Club is one of the most historic events on the calendar. This was its 80th anniversary. 80 years, 8 decades of tradition. And what happened? 4 of the biggest names in golf withdrew. Scottie Scheffler, the face of American golf, a Texas native, was absent. Jordan Spieth, the man who has an emotional connection to Texas golf, was missing. Wyndham Clark, who had just won the Byron Nelson, pulled out. And Brooks Koepka, a former major champion who just returned to the tour, decided to rest instead. That decision would have been enough to create controversy. But what happened next made everything before it look minor. And here's what's really interesting about Colonial. Even after those withdrawals, the field still had 7 of the top 20 players in the world. So it wasn't a weak field, it was still a strong tournament. But the emotional energy had shifted. The buzz wasn't there. The excitement wasn't the same. And that's exactly what Jack Nicklaus is worried about. He sees a future where tournaments like Colonial, tournaments with 80 years of history, become afterthoughts, where they get squeezed between signature events and majors until they just don't matter anymore. So why did Brooks Koepka withdraw? That's a question worth exploring, because his decision tells us everything about the pressure players are under right now. Koepka returned to the PGA Tour this year after leaving for Live Golf. He came back through what's called the returning member program, and because of those rules, he doesn't automatically get access to the signature events. He has to qualify his way in. Right now, he's chasing a spot through the Aon Swing 5 standings. The top 5 players in that ranking earn entry into the elite tournaments. Koepka is reportedly around 20 points outside the cutoff, so he's in this impossible position. He needs to play more events to qualify, but playing more events wears him out, and wearing himself out could ruin his chances at the majors. So what does he do? Does he go all in on Colonial, or does he pull back and rest for the Memorial and the US Open? He chose to rest, and I don't blame him one bit. 7 straight tournament weeks is brutal. That's not just physically exhausting, that's mentally draining. That's a recipe for burnout. And here's the thing, Koepka's decision didn't just affect him, it had consequences for 2 other players. Zach Blair and Patrick Fishburne. Because of the returning member program rules, when Koepka enters a tournament, the field expands to include additional players. If he had stayed committed to Colonial, the field would have grown from 132 players to 135. That means Blair and Fishburne would have gotten guaranteed tee times. Instead, after Koepka withdrew, they became alternates. They had to sit and wait. They had to hope that someone else pulled out. And even if they did get in, their preparation was disrupted. Their mental focus was compromised. One scheduling decision from a superstar suddenly changed opportunities for multiple careers. That's the human cost of this new tour structure. And that's what Jack Nicklaus is trying to protect. He's not just fighting for tradition, he's fighting for the players who get crushed by the system, the guys on the bubble, the guys who need those starts to keep their careers alive. So now let's get back to Muirfield Village, because what happened there after the press conference is where this story reaches its peak. Jack and Rolapp sat down together, and according to sources close to the situation, the meeting was tense, very tense. Jack didn't hold back. He looked Rolapp in the eye and told him exactly what he thought of these reforms. He talked about the players. He talked about the traditions. He talked about the tournaments that had been the backbone of the tour for decades. And then he said the words that everyone in that room will never forget. You are unfit to lead. 47 players heard it. 47 players witnessed a living legend dismantle the CEO of the PGA Tour in front of everyone. And then Jack walked out of that room. Now here's where it gets even more complex. The tour didn't listen to Jack. A few weeks after that meeting, on June 23rd, the PGA Tour formally approved Rolapp's 2-tier system. They announced it with fanfare. They called it a new competitive model grounded in meritocracy, with clearer pathways, higher stakes, and more consistency when the best players compete together. Tiger Woods stood right beside Rolapp at the announcement. He said, and I'm quoting him, "It has been a privilege to lead the Future Competition Committee, and I am proud of the work we have done to build the best version of the PGA Tour for future generations of players and fans." That's the real twist in this story. Tiger Woods, the man who spent his entire career chasing Nicklaus's record, endorsed the very changes that Nicklaus condemned. The 2 greatest golfers in history are on opposite sides of this battle. So where does that leave us? What does this mean for the future of the PGA Tour? The Championship Series will launch in 2028. 23 to 24 elite events, $20 million purses, 120 player fields, promotion and relegation, a completely restructured season. And what about the tournaments that don't make the cut? What about the Cognizant Classic? What about Colonial? What about all the historic events that don't have the prestige or the money to compete? Jack Nicklaus said it himself. What chance does that tournament have? That question is hanging over the entire sport right now, because nobody has a good answer. The tour is changing. Some say it's evolution. Others say it's destruction. Jack says it's a mistake, and he said it to the man in charge, to his face, in front of 47 witnesses. So I'll ask you again, was Jack right to call him out like that? Or is Rolapp just trying to do what's best for the future of the game? Let me know what you think. And if this breakdown gave you a deeper understanding of what's really happening behind the scenes on the PGA Tour, hit that subscribe button. We're building a community of real golf fans who care about more than just the scores. We care about the stories behind them, the battles that shape the sport we love. And one thing's for certain, The battle between Jack Nicklaus and Brian Rolapp is far from over. The Golden Bear spoke his truth, but the question is, will anyone listen before it's too late?